Hey guys, it's Fernando from Zero to Data Science, and today we're going to go over the project guide, the Zero to Data Science project guide. It's the step-by-step guide on creating your own projects. And a project-based learning is the heart of both learning data science and also creating your portfolio, which ultimately is the most useful tool to get a job. So this is the complete opposite of what most people do to learn. Most people just start, at page one of a book or a textbook, or they go to Coursera and just start taking courses. I personally did this the first couple months, and I lost probably 6 7 months because I don't remember most of what I read during that time. So once I started doing projects, it was definitely tougher, but I remember most of it, and this is how most boot camps teach. This is how most classes that are trying to get you a job as quickly as possible, this is how they teach. This is the most effective way to learn. And remember that as you do these steps, as you do the project, you're going to feel lost. You're going to feel like maybe you need to read a little more, but it's just part of the process. It's just part of real learning. Maybe when you're reading books, you feel like you're making progress, but you're not really. You're not being tested. And here you're being tested at every single point. So know that it's going to be a little frustrating. You're going to feel lost, but it's part of the process. So let's start. We're going to do a real world project and how to use this framework. So this PDF has a couple steps and we're going to go through them. So the first thing to do is define your project. You want to have a clear idea of what you want to do so that you can define your work and have motivation and have a metric of success. So you want to answer two questions. First is, what are the projects that interest you? I think this is often, not a lot of people talk about this. They just want to get jobs. They worry more about maybe the financial security. Data science does offer that, but you have to be interested in order to keep up with the new technologies. In order to learn as quickly as possible, you have to be interested. So what are projects that interest you? For example, here would be recommender systems. So it could be recommendation systems. It could be song text analysis. It could be forecasting stocks. I know a lot of people are cryptocurrencies. A lot of people are doing that now. It could be image recognition. I think it's a C. There, T. Okay. So once you identify what you're interested in, what are the industries that you want to work in? You always want to have this at top of mind. Where do I want to work? You want to have stuff that interests you, but ultimately you're going to be applying for jobs, and these projects are going to be seen by others. So what industry do you want to work for? What kind of problems do you want to solve for the industry? So it could be social media. It could be education, social media, environmental, it could be music, and so forth. So for this example, this is something that I really wanted to build, was a recommendation system. And one of my favorite data is Twitter data. There's the API is freely available, so why don't you put that together? And I wanted to use, the first idea that I came up with was a Twitter user recommendation engine. Some other ideas could be, like we talked about before, forecasting crypto. It could be predicting Kickstarter success. If you want to work for a company like Kickstarter, or if you want to work for education, predicting intervention, educational intervention. So maybe there's data out there that of students taking tests, and you want to have a way where the program can have an intervention at the right time, just when the student's about to quit. So these are all projects that you can work on. But we're going to focus on the Twitter user recommendation engine. So like I mentioned before, now we have a goal. We have a metrics of success, and this is something that I actually want to build, so it's pretty motivating. So after this is the next step is to find 5 finished projects that are similar to yours. So instead of reading a book about recommendation engine, I want to see at a high level some a project finished from beginning to end. So this is where you could just Google. So Twitter recommendation engine. Let's do user. So here you'll start already to see some projects, right? The hashtag recommendation system. A lot of these are research, so maybe these are not the ones you want to see. So this is another one, interesting one. Ancora. Here it is, content-based Twitter recommendation engine with Python. So now you're just starting to see what's out there. What's possible? What have people worked on already? So while this loads, I also want to share with you some that I've already seen that were pretty interesting. When I was starting the project, these are some interesting ones. So first is the New York Times. When I was looking at content-based recommenders, I saw that the New York Times actually they shared their own recommendation engine, like how they built theirs. And they don't have code, so I didn't use this, but they talked about their approach. So using collaborative topic modeling, I know they use LDA, how they put it all together. So it's really, really interesting. A lot of great ideas. Another one is this project. It's a Twitter user recommendation based on the content. And this is actually pretty good because he lists out all the tools, why he did it, his process, right? He takes his own tweets, then he gets all his followers, and sees how related what they're talking about and what he's talking about is. Like, he sees how related it is and then recommends people to himself based on how close the topics are. He sees the findings. This is so well organized. It's amazing. So he's done already a lot of the hard work for us in terms of searching and seeing if it's possible for us. So he's kind of like a mentor, a guide. This is actually a really good project. And I ended up actually using this, but let's go through another one. So this is another Twitter recommendation system. Actually, I don't think it's Twitter. I think it's news. So she goes, again, she talks about the tasks. She talks about her approach. Some visuals. What she uses is topic modeling, LDA. How she chose the number of topics. And she also has her code in here. So again, it's so well organized. She calls it News for You. You can see her approach. These are real projects, and she's actually done a really good job on this. So what I decided to do was, so you save all these basically. You put it on the worksheet. All right, you say these are the ones that interest me. These are the ones I think I can do that are approachable. They're well documented, and they have pretty good ideas. I'm not going to include the New York Times. I'm not going to, since it doesn't have code, we can't really walk through it. So, but it's good to have. I think later on, if we optimize our model, then I think this one has a good idea. So I picked out 3 now, but you pick out 5. The next step is, out of those 5, review it at a high level. See what are they doing, and pick one, and then summarize what they're doing. So what I ended up picking is this one, the content recommender of Twitter, because the Twitter API is pretty easy to use. I I think she might have used the New York Times API, which is a little more difficult to use. He also is taught has everything in detail, right? He talks about his findings. He has his notebooks go through each phase, like how he got the data, how he cleaned the data. Every single thing you need to do to run his project is here. Look, he even has how he saved it in MongoDB, how he got the data, how he cleans it. So I decided to go with this one. After reading, after going through it, I saw that his actually it's right here. Here it is. I want to understand his process, right? How he did everything. And I want to record the phases, every single phase that he went into. At a high level, I want to understand what he did. So what is the steps he did? First, he says he wanted to get comfortable with Tweepy and MongoDB. It's about saving the data. So I put get tweets from Twitter API. Then he got the tweets from his second degree followers, right? So this is all getting the API. This is my own summary. He talks about here cleaning the data. And vectorizing it so that you can use it in LDA. Then it's running the model and finding topics. Then you want to compare the topics from the main user to the second degree followers. And then return recommendations. So for me to get this overview and for me to choose this project probably took an hour or two. So I had to review all the code from the other projects. So I went not only through his project, but the other projects, the New York Times project. I had to read this to really understand what's going on. I didn't really know anything beforehand. I can go through it right now very quickly because I've read through this project before, but it lets you understand from a high level, from beginning to end, what is the process like. You may not understand what LDA is. You may not understand what topic modeling is. You may not understand what bag of words, what stemming is. It doesn't matter. You understand the process from beginning to end. And the more we begin to run the code and make it our own, the more we're going to have to learn that. And that's how you learn more of the theory. But it's all tied back to the goal. So after you've summarized it, next you want to run the project locally. So now we're going to start going through this code, and we want the results in our own computer. And as we run his code, we're going to see that we're going to stumble into things. There's going to be things that don't really quite work. So we got to go around it, learn why maybe we don't have the data he does. So, and when we run our data, his models don't work. So maybe we're going to have to use our own, we have to tweak it in our own way, and we're going to have to learn about the models in order to tweak it. And as we go through his code, we want to record the topics that we're learning. We want to record what are the new things that we don't understand. What are the new packages that we're learning about. So I'll give you an example. First is getting the data, right? So I went through his project, the way he did it. I think this is a lot of this is really unnecessary. So I decided to go to the Tweepy API. So he talks about using Tweepy, right? So I probably would have never realized about using Tweepy if he didn't tell me about it. So I went to the documentation, and here it tells me very simply how to use Tweepy, like like the code snippets. So I ended up using this the Tweepy API, the Tweepy wrapper, and the documentation to get the code. And this probably took about 30 to 40 minutes. So it's not easy, but it's a lot of Googling, a lot of going through it. So I'm going to show you the first version, right? So I ended up recording the data, right? Capturing data like with Tweepy, running it through the API. He uses his own data, so I try to look at Elon Musk's tweets. He only follows a couple people, so I thought he might want to follow more. But then I stumbled on something else. I realized that you can only get maybe 20 of his tweets. So then I was like, I don't have enough tweets, so how do I get more tweets? I decided to go to Kaggle, get data from Donald Trump. He has thousands of tweets that are recorded. Next was cleaning the data, going through his project. Here it is. Right, he got his project. He created a dictionary. This is detailing every single part of how he cleaned the data, and what's the format it needs to be to use LDA. Right. I had to go through this whole thing. It's a little long here, but it's basically just trying a bunch of different things, seeing if it works locally. Some of the stuff he didn't work locally. So in my example, I got the data. Then when I started to clean it, for example, all of this is his code. It's somewhere in here. I just ended up using his code. Some of it didn't work, and I ended up going into the NLP, which is Gensim. I ended up using Spacy, going into the documentation in Spacy. It took me hours to figure this out, but I got it to work in my local computer. And that's the point. When you try to rerun the code, you realize how easy things breaks, and to fix it, you have to learn you have to learn about the packages. You have to learn about the theory, and this is when you start picking up the theory. So as you're running through the code and you have to make it work on your own local computer, you see I had to use Gensim. I changed some of his code. As you're doing this, you begin to document, right? Record new topics and concepts. So you want to keep a record so that later you can dive deeper into these things. So, for example, he talks about stemming, he talks about lemmonization, he talks about Spacy, and so this is what I ended up writing. So Twitter project, take note of stuff that you want to look up. So for example, bag of words. What is the steps? Create a dictionary, which is a list of unique words of SEP documents, run a new document through it, and for example, I have this link that I wanted to save so that I can look it up, right? So I'm going through the whole project, running through the code, making sure it works, and then looking it up at a high level what each thing is doing, so that I understand and I can change it later on. That's just an example. Another one is LDA, coherence score, k-means and the elbow method, how to implement coherence, tokenize, lemonize. I had also links for Spacy for all the packages, and it was very, very frustrating, but I got it to work. Understanding corpus. I ran through so I was able to run through his whole code. I saved the topics that I wanted to learn, but in the meantime, I saved the topics that I wanted to go deeper, but I understood at a high level what everything was doing. So the next part is making it your own. Making your own involves three parts. So first is making the code as simple as it can be. So a lot of his, all the code he had in different repositories, I put it into one notebook. I took everything that was not necessary. And to even decide what's not necessary takes an understanding of what the model's doing. So it takes Googling exactly what it is, Googling the theory, Googling the packages. So in changing the model parameters to see different results. So for him, he chose the number of topics. So LDA takes text, gives you back topics that are in that text that the machine learning model guesses these are the topics. But you have to choose the number of topics, right? The way he did it is he looked at it visually and said, okay, these are the topics, right? This makes sense. If I choose 6 over 10, 6 makes more sense than 10 because I see it. But I wanted a way to automate it. So to make it my own, I Googled it. I Googled how to automate this. And I came up with this. Right, so I found the coherence score. So what coherence score does is it picks the number. It's a metric of showing which number of topics explains the data better, separates the data better. So I ended up Googling this. I ended up topic modeling. I found the coherence score. I actually found a piece of code. And I basically took this from somebody online. This compute coherence values. And it actually allows you to plot it. This is my addition. I made it my own. I simplified everything. I made it into I made this into a function. I'm actually going to show. I even took the original code from the original project and made everything into a function. I simplified everything, right? So to make it my own, I simplified every step, and then I made everything. I made it into a function, and then I added a metric, additional metric that I thought was useful, right? And you already can see that I started annotating everything. So I started making my own. I also used different data. So instead of the Elon Musk data, I used the Donald Trump data. I saw that Donald Trump has a lot more tweets, so I ended up in different types of tweets. So I excluded certain words. I had to play around with it, and to play around with it, I had to learn it. I think that's the trick. As you keep playing around, you start learning, and it sticks more. And this really motivated me because I wanted this recommendation system to work. So I kept Googling, and I pushed through. The part right before sharing it online is annotating it and listing results. So as you can see, I've already started to annotate it here, but this isn't the final notebook. I was still playing around here. I was still trying to get everything to work. But the final notebook is right here. So I've added at the beginning what the notebook covers. I've cleaned it up. I've cleaned up the notebook. I've annotated every single part. So what the getting data, the cleaning data. So if anybody can go in here, they could see my process. So talk about data acquisition, the phases that we were talking about, the approach. My approach was getting Twitter data using the Twitter API. I use LDA. I found topics, and then I ranked it to how many words, how many topics have 2 words in common. I even talked about the next steps. I felt that RMF might perform better, and I want to optimize it. I thought it was too slow, and I want to get access to more data because the Twitter API was a little, it limits the amount of tweets you can get. So here you can see I've annotated everything. Part 2, this is where I lemonize, remove stop words. I vectorized it. I turned it into functions. I run the model, and I use the compute coherence values to pick the number of topics. I run LDA and get the topics. So now I run for the main user, which is Trump. Then I used his followers, and at the end I was able to cross-check, and I got these 3 people that were his recommendations, and then the topics that they overlapped in. So as you see, some of these topics they're not very clear, and that's why I think LDA is not the best way to go. This took me about 2 days to do, and I already got feedback. Right, I could see it works. Not the best. I could see by the topics. I know what next steps to do. I have a list of terms that I can look up and go deeper in, and it all fits together into a solid project, and that's why I think this is very powerful, a project-based approach. The last part, after you've annotated it, is to share your results on GitHub, right? You want to share it online on GitHub, and then on your personal website. So this should be 7, but you post it on GitHub, and then you link into your website. So right here. So I've already put it on GitHub. It's clean. You see this is basically the header from the notebook. And when you go to the this is the README. And when you go to the recommendation engine, it's super easy to see my process, to see what I was thinking, and to see my next steps. And again, this took about 2 to 3 days. I've learned so much. And I have like a finished product that I can already share with people. At some point I was very frustrated. I felt very lost. I felt like maybe I picked the wrong project, but now I think it's all come together, and it's all because it was a project-based approach. I had a goal in mind, and I had a practical result, and this is what project-based learning is about. And this has been added to my portfolio, which I could use later. And that's it. This is the Zero Data Science Project Guide. I really encourage you to use this continuously. After you've done Jose's course, do 5 other projects using this guide. A project should take you no more than 1 to 2 weeks. Maybe a week to finish from beginning to end, and then another week to really go deep into the theory and then optimize it. And maybe you can build this. You can use this to build your apps or so forth. So, I'm really excited for you to take advantage of this project guide. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. And as always, work daily.